I'm speaking with Dr. Sandra Steingraber. She's the award-winning author of Raising Elijah, Protecting Our Children in an Age of Environmental Crisis. So, that song kind of brings to mind about teaching our children well. What's the best way to talk to children about climate change? Because it is such a big topic, and kids are the future, right? I mean, they're the ones who are going to be living in our terrible climate.
They are, and I went through a real evolution on this, and I think my feelings and opinions are still evolving. So, what you see in the book is me really struggling with it, and it begins with a very strong conviction that children should not become atmospheric junior rangers. That this whole idea that kids should be sort of the environmental ambassadors to the family really bugs me. These problems that we're facing happened within my lifetime. I didn't create them, but they happened on my watch. When I was born in 1959, the plankton stocks were much higher than they are now. They've declined by 40% in my lifetime because of the surface warming of the ocean temperatures. And, of course, plankton provide us half of the oxygen we breathe. That's just one of many dire problems. And so I don't need my children to think about that and worry about that. Mm-hmm. I need to work on it with other adults to solve the problem. And my kids need to just develop a sense of wonder about the world and go outside and play and enjoy themselves. And so that was my starting point. But then something happened, which was that it became a quaint idea to think I could somehow protect them from this knowledge, because the climate is changing fast enough now that it's apparent even to young children. So when in January a couple of years ago we had 70-degree weather and daffodils and apple blossoms were apparent and mosquitoes were flying through our upstairs bathroom, my children asked me, "Mom, it's not supposed to be so hot, is it right?" And then I also teach Sunday school, and one Sunday in January we were all outside in our shirt sleeves, and one child said, 5-year-old, said, "I know why the earth is sick." And all these other children gathered around to hear what she had to say. And I said nothing. And then came the third incident in which my son asked my daughter, coming down the stairs for breakfast one morning, what the weather was like. So she went outside on the porch to check, came back in, and said, "It's global warming-ish." And they both nodded and went back to their oatmeal. And so I began to realize that, the horse has left the barn here, and I needed to come up with a talk about climate change that was age appropriate for my kids. And so I set out to write the best possible talk, and I modeled it after my own, where do babies come from talk. Mm-hmm. And I realized that they have a lot in common, although they're one is the other one run in reverse, because where babies come from is a story about creation, and at the end of it, there's a family. Climate change is a story of decreation. It's the story of mass species extinction, and at the end of it is death. And so with that in mind, I tried to develop this tale, and none of my versions were very satisfying to me. And so I actually wrote about this in an essay that was published in Orion magazine, where I'm a columnist, and a reader wrote in something that then I realized was very true. She said that she was a retired third-grade teacher and was teaching during the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis in the early 60s. And she asked her students how many thought that their nuclear war would happen in their lifetime, and every child raised his or her hand except for one girl. And so she asked that lone dissenter why she felt that it wouldn't happen. And she said, because my parents are peace activists and they're working to stop it.
Oh.
So that made me realize, the point is not to create the perfect, most eloquent, age-appropriate story. The point is to let your children see you stand up and do something about it, so that your kids can see that you are a member of the French resistance in the face of an ecological holocaust. You are not going to be a good German. And that's what's reassuring to kids, is to watch their parents take action.
That's fabulous.
Not to sit down not to sit down and describe, carbon dioxide accumulation.
Fabulous.
And corollaries.
So tell us, how can the average person, you're testifying in Congress, but what is the average listener here who is kind of overwhelmed with a lot of stuff? It's not just the global warming, but it's Fukushima radiation coming, and prices rising and unemployment and all this stuff. I mean, so how can people get involved in a way that isn't going to make them feel even more overwhelmed?
Right. Well, here's where I'm not exactly prescriptive, because I don't think there is an average person. I think every person has their own particular circumstances. They live in their own particular ecology and community, and so they have different gifts to offer. And so what I can say is I have worked with, and I have as my readers, many different sorts of folks. So, for example, I have some parents who are really interested in food and are actively doing things such as helping their school system source with local organic farmers for the dining hall. That does a couple of things. It creates good food habits in children, but it also creates an incredible market for the farmers, and thereby contributes vibrancy to our rural communities. Other people who are not so interested in food, but they're really interested in issues like urban planning and transportation, and so redesigning our communities to make them more walkable, so we don't have to, strap our kids into car seats and drive them around everywhere. I live in a village where a group of parents, one generation before me, did a big capital campaign to put sidewalks through the whole village, and actually narrowed our main street rather than widened it to make it more pedestrian friendly. And so I chose to live in the village I live in precisely because my kids can just jump on their bikes or their scooters and just fly all around. They can go to their own music lessons in a library and the post office and deposit their allowance in the bank. And it's safe. And that actually makes my life easier as a parent, because I don't have to drive them to all these places. And, of course, it lowers my carbon footprint as well. So I'm in debt to the foresightful parents before me who figured out how to change the built environment of our community to make it pedestrian friendly. My 12-year-old daughter is now fighting for her right for non-toxic nail polish, so that getting toxic chemicals out of personal care products is an ongoing issue. I've worked with professional golfers who want organic golf courses and people who are working hard to get those same pesticides off of soccer fields and so forth. And
so every little bit helps, right? Every little bit helps.
Well, it does. I mean, but we have to remember that we're not talking about every little bit individually. It's every little bit in a kind of multiplicative way, meaning we have to transform our institutions. It's not just a matter of shopping differently or changing your light bulbs.
So it's voting for certain candidates who will help support these initiatives as well.
It's that, and it's doing things like, bringing these issues of where are we sourcing our food from to all the different communities that you belong to, not just your own house, for your church, the local nursing home, the school, and so forth. And so if we can transform institutions, we can move things along faster, and of course it's a great opportunity to do public education.
And speaking of education, you were recently the subject of a documentary film. Is that going to be released anytime soon? It
is released, yeah. So Living Downstream, which is my story of my early cancer diagnosis at age 20, and then my attempt as a biologist to understand the links between cancer and the environment and investigate the cancer cluster in my hometown. That book was turned into a documentary film that was released a year ago, and films are a bit different than books. With books, we kind of release them in the big bang, but films kind of go through this slow trajectory. First, they're shown in film festivals, so it had a nice film festival run, and now it's still enjoying a theater run. And very soon it will be available as a DVD to individuals. Right now, if you want to have a house party or show it as a member of a nonprofit group, you can go to livingdownstream.com and order a copy.
Oh, that's terrific. That must have been exciting for you to have that.
It was exciting. I have to say that film is just an entirely different medium than books, if only because, first of all, a lot of the communities that are the people most affected by toxic chemicals are not necessarily book-reading communities, which is a hard admission for an author, because I still believe in the power of books. But even my own hometown, there's not, when I wrote Living Downstream, there wasn't a bookstore in the whole county. So there wasn't really a way to get the message to the people who live in the place where the book is set. On the other hand, when we showed the film in the local cinema, we had lines out the door and so many people that we had to open a second theater to accommodate everybody. So, and when people watch film together, it's different than reading books, which is a private act. So there's a chance to use film as an organizing tool because you can watch the film and then have a discussion with your neighbors or with your church group or with the hospital administration or whatever, and then begin a conversation immediately about what we're going to do about it. So it's very gratifying.
That's fantastic. And do you think it'll be airing on TV?
We hope so. A lot of broadcasters are looking at it. We hope to get a nibble soon. Not yet, though.
And so if people want to learn more about what they can do aside from getting a hold of your book, so again, the name of the book is Raising Elijah. First of all, they could, and you have your own website, right?
I do, steingraber.com.
You want to spell that?
Sure. My name is German for by the stony ditch, which I always thought was a good name for an ecologist. So Steingraber is Steingraber.
Fantastic. And so people can find out about your book and your film there. And do you have any last words for us? We have about a minute left.
Well, I guess I believe strongly that what we love, we must protect. And depending on where you live, what we feel called to protect will be different. So for me here in upstate New York, our biggest crisis right now is we have on our doorstep some of the biggest corporations in the world, Halliburton and Exxon and Chesapeake Energy, who seek to conduct an extreme form of energy extraction known as hydrofracking for shale gas, which threatens to industrialize our landscape and pollute our air and water. And so this morning I was testifying in our Albany State House about the health effects and am working with my community here to do what we can to reimagine our community along sustainable lines, lowering our energy demands and investing our energy dollars in renewables so we don't need to rely on fossil fuels anymore. So that feels to me like what's going on at this historical moment here in New York, and my listeners and readers may have different challenges that they're facing.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for talking to us today. So much on the topic, and you're a wealth of information and a beautiful writer. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for listening today. For podcasts and more information on my show, visit yoursupernaturallife.com. You can also download the show on iTunes, and you can find my book, Supernatural Home, on my website, supernaturalmom.com. And if you type in the website /free gift, you can download a free 20-question quiz from my book to help you determine where, when, and how you are unwittingly being exposed to dangerous chemicals from everyday products in your home. So I will see you here next week. Have a supernatural life. I'm Beth Greer.